like to welcome everybody to this special live event where I'm talking about the hardware as a service model. I think for many of you, this event is, the topic may sound a little bit more specific, but I think this is going to end up being one of your most profitable events that you have attended because of just what it means for your ability to sell these larger merchant accounts, especially. So I want to ask you a couple of questions while we're waiting for everybody to jump on, just so I can get a little bit of a sense of the audience. So here we go. Question number one. How many of you on here over in the question box, just give me a yes if you have actually sold a hardware as a service deal. So what I mean by that is you've sold a large client on a point of sale system where they haven't financed the hardware, but they've only paid monthly. So there's like a month they pay, $100 a month for the hardware, or they pay $50 a month for the hardware, but there's not like a lease, like a 36-month lease or anything, any financing at all. It's just this is the amount for the hardware. Give me a yes if you've sold it like that. Give me a no if you haven't. So yes if you have, no if you haven't, just so I can kind of see how many of you are familiar with this concept. That would help me out. Okay, so more no's than yeses here. So the question for those of you just joining is, how many of you have ever sold what I would call a hardware as a service deal, meaning there's a monthly cost for the hardware, but it's not like a lease or anything like that. It's just there's a monthly cost ongoing to provide hardware to the merchant, no upfront cost, that sort of thing. Wow, okay, so the vast majority of you have not done this model, so this is awesome. You are going to love this event. Okay, next question. So this event is sponsored by Lavu. I'm going to be interviewing Saleem Khatri, the CEO at Lavu here in just a little bit. How many of you have actually placed a Lavu point of sale system, whether you did it a long time ago before they had the reseller program with the hardware as a service or whatever? How many of you have actually placed a Lavu deal? Just give me a yes if you placed a Lavu deal, and no if you haven't. Just curious on that one. We've actually placed a Lavu deal, lots and lots of no's, some yeses. Good. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, awesome. All right, great. I appreciate it. That's good for me. It just gives me some context to know what what the a level of existing knowledge is going to be here. So, okay, so I have this is a this is going to be an event where my focus in this event is on giving you the knowledge that you need in order to understand how to go in and sell fine dining, large multi-location type restaurants where you can remove the barrier of the cost of the equipment. And in order to get you there, I want to walk you through a little bit of some of the challenges in providing these point of sale systems to restaurants specifically, because they, restaurants, it's, there's obviously a big part of this happens with retail and others, but with restaurants, they tend to need a lot more hardware than other business types because they need the kitchen printer or the display screen or other things along those lines. They might need tableside ordering. And so there just tends to be a lot more that they need. And so a lot of agents that I talk to are running into this issue where we have a restaurant, they're interested, but they need $20,000 or $50,000 worth of hardware. And so the deal gets lost in the shuffle and they don't end up closing. The deal. So here we go. Let me go to the next slide here, and I'm just going to walk you through this. So I'm going to walk you through this one slide, and then I'm going to interview Saleem about the experience that Lavu has had, with all of this. So I've got 5 things here that I want to walk you through real quick. Number one is complexity. So when we look at the payment processing industry today, and especially the restaurant side of things, what do we see out there in the marketplace today versus, here's a good question, actually, for those of you now that a lot of you just joined. How many years have you been selling payment processing? Give me that in the question box over to the right. How many years have you been selling payment processing? Just give me a number. You know what I mean? So 10 years, 3 years, 1 year. Okay. 30 years. Wow. 30 years. Donald. Awesome. 15 years, 2 years, 3 years, 8 years, 6 years, 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, 24 years, 9 years. Lots of industry experts on here. 18 years. Okay. So for those of you that have been selling payment processing for a long time, you may remember a time when this was actually pretty simple, right? You go to a restaurant and you would sell them I remember going to lots of sit-down restaurants and giving them a credit card terminal, 13 years ago when I started, some of them would have a point of sale system and I would say, oh, we'll just put a credit card machine on the side. You'll be good to go. Even when you were selling them on the point of sale system, you were essentially selling them a box. You know what I mean? Now, it was a very frustrating box. It was a very confusing box, but it was a box. You know what I mean? They didn't want tableside ordering. They weren't expecting a kitchen display screen. They just wanted a box and a kitchen printer, and that was it. They were happy. Like, that's all they wanted, and that was it, and it was a solution that was a software solution downloaded onto the device and everything like that. Well, fast forward to today, and now we're competing against companies like Toast and others, where these restaurants are expecting this extremely robust system. I mean, if you're selling fine dining restaurants, especially, I mean, they're going to want table seating. They're going to want, many of them, ingredient management. They're going to want tableside ordering, online ordering, integration to delivery services, right? They're going to want all these things. And they're also going to want this really seamless operating experience in their actual physical business. And that's going to require a lot of cost. Okay. And so as we think about competitors like Toast and many, many others, I always use Toast as an example because we all kind of know them. But as we think about competitors, we think about the perception of the restaurant owner. So the perception of the restaurateur is that there are these three big costs. When you walk into a restaurant or you're having a conversation with a restaurant and they look at you, what do they think? They think about cost, honestly, right? You walk in and say, oh, I do point of sale and I do payment processing. What are they thinking about? Are they thinking about growing their business? Are they thinking about saving money? No, not really. What their mind is going to go to naturally is going to be cost, right? And there's three big costs they're going to think about. The first one is going to be the payment acceptance cost, because they know that's an ongoing cost. And for restaurants where their gross margins are like, 3%, 4%, 5%, for them, they're paying 2.5%, 3.5% of their gross revenue in payment processing. I mean, that is such a massive expense that's on their mind. They're thinking about the payment processing cost, right? And with all this complexity, now they're not just thinking about payment processing costs, they're also thinking about software costs, right? Well, how much am I going to pay for this delivery service integration with Toast? How much am I going to pay to have 3 stations at 3 locations? What's my software cost going to be, right? But the third one is, in my experience, the biggest barrier to the actual sale. In other words, when you walk in, you talk about payment processing costs. What do you say, right? We all say the same thing, of course, which is your payment processing costs are going to be lower, right? Or we're going to match, right? Match or beat. So we tend to kind of push the payment processing costs off as kind of no biggie. You know what I mean? We're going to either save you some money or we're going to match or whatever. And so that's usually not a big barrier to the sale. The software cost, well, that can be a barrier to sale if it's really, really high, but usually you can justify that. They're used to that concept, right? They're used to paying software fees. So you just have to show, well, hold on, with our software, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that. We have a flat rate. Here's how it's going to work. And it's like, okay, you can sell them on that. But then what happens? Well, we've all experienced this. It comes down to the hardware cost. Okay. So here's my next question. Give me a number. Okay. This is like a dollar amount in the question box. When those of you that have sold a restaurant client, okay, when they have to buy their own hardware, when you're selling a single location restaurant, what is their average cost of hardware at a single location restaurant on the ones that you've sold? Give me a dollar amount in the question box. I'm really curious here to kind of see what you all are experiencing. Okay. What is the dollar amount of the hardware for one restaurant location, right? 5,000, 5,000, 1,500, 2,000 plus, okay? 4,000, right? 8,000, 7,000, yeah. 5,000, 25 to 3,000, right? 5,000. So I would say kind of the average we're getting here is around $5,000. Now, again, this is for a single location, right? And what's interesting is if you look at some proposals from, say, Toast, you'll see those numbers even go higher a lot of times, even for a single location, because they're pitching them on, hey, you need tableside ordering and all of that kind of stuff, right? So we have this hardware cost. And so we convinced the restaurant owner that, hey, you know what, maybe this point of sale system would be a better solution. But Then we get to hardware cost, right? And it's like, yeah, it's only going to cost you $5,000 to switch over to me, $8,000, 4,000, 3,000, whatever that number is. When you get to that number, that is a significant barrier to the process. So what do we do to solve this problem? Well, in the past, the way we have solved the problem is with financing. I'm sure you've all done this. I know I have. We offer them financing. Well, we're going to give you financing for 4 years on a lease, or 3 years or 6 years or whatever. Or, a company I was working with recently that sells point of sale, they actually ask the restaurant owner to get their own financing, right? And say, well, yeah, you can finance this. We'll give you a financing application you can fill out, and you can just get your own financing for this, Well, that's a big barrier, right? Because now we have these two possible barriers. We're asking them to do one of two really difficult things. Either number one is just write me a check, come up with the cash, $5,000. And, I mean, not to say that restaurants can't afford that, but it's, for a lot of them, that's a huge burden. Like, that's a lot of money. They might be spending, $3,500 a week on, $3,500 a month, even on payroll for one of their employees. You're literally asking them to kind of spend a whole extra employee of payroll in a month or whatever, right? So it's a lot of money for them. Or you're saying, if you don't want that, you can apply for financing yourself. Well, how many of us have applied for financing, right? How fun is that? Putting all your sensitive information out there and all these things. So those are the available options. So then we come into this idea of HAAS, or hardware as a service model. Now, what is hardware as a service model? Well, the idea of hardware as a service is, when we think about software as a service, right? The idea used to be that you downloaded software. I know many of you, from the length of time you've been in this industry alone, you were around when we downloaded software, right? I know I certainly was. And, when you would go to buy software, you didn't pay monthly for it, right? You paid $100 or $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever, and you downloaded the software and you bought it and you owned it. Right? Well, what's happened? How popular is that today versus software as a service? Well, there's no comparison. I mean, I would be surprised if 5% of total software sales in the last year went to these downloading softwares. Like, nobody does that anymore, because businesses don't like that. They don't like the cash flow implications. They would much rather have a predictable monthly amount, and they have a predictable amount where they know that the maintenance is included, right? If I'm paying for a software solution, and I'm paying, $100 a month for some software solution, and the software, there's a bug or there's an issue with it, right? What happens? Is it my job to fix that software? No, I'm paying $99 a month. That's up to the software company. They fix it. They take care of it, and they make sure it works for me. If I need a feature, I reach out, and it's their job to keep their customers happy. And so businesses have gravitated towards this software as a service model as the ideal way to do business. Well, here's the question. Why wouldn't we do the same thing with hardware, right? So with hardware as a service, we're saying, okay, you have this hardware in your business, but guess what? It's not your hardware, right? In this case, for Lavu, it's not the restaurant's hardware, it's Lavu's hardware, right? Lavu is responsible for this hardware. We're going to provide it to you. There's no upfront, there's no big upfront investment. There may be some setup costs, but there's no upfront investment there. And then you have this monthly amount, and this is the hardware as a service model, right? This is what you pay each month for that hardware. And so depending on which hardware pieces you get, there's an amount that is an investment monthly in order to maintain this hardware and make sure it works great. If something goes wrong, well, it's Lavu's hardware. It's not your hardware. It's not your problem, right? You reach out to Lavu, they take care of it, right? And so this is that hardware as a service model. So now we don't have to apply for financing anymore, right? There's just a simple part of the application that says, here's the parts, here's the hardware I want, and that we agree to pay these amounts, right? Now, one last layer I'm going to put on top of this, and then I'm going to introduce Saleem, and we're gonna dive into this a bit more. Okay, so then we bring in dual pricing, and we layer dual pricing on top of everything I just said. And you might think to yourself, well, wait a minute, James, how does dual pricing fit into all this? Well, it's really interesting. Dual pricing, as we all know, dramatically increases the profitability of these accounts. So much so that it's actually worthwhile on some of these larger accounts for you, the agent, the ISO, to actually absorb the hardware and software fees, one or both, right? So you can actually go into a restaurant now and you can eliminate all of the cost. I mean, think about that. It's one thing to go in and say, hey, if you pay $5,000 for the hardware and $89 a month for the software, you don't have to pay any payment processing cost, right? That's good, right? It's good to be able to say, if you pay the payment processing, I'll give you the hardware for free. But what if you go in and say, no payment acceptance cost, no software cost, no hardware cost? That is a killer pitch. And it's actually the pitch that I talk about in the Lavu training program I put together. You can find that at ccsalespro.com/Lavu, which we'll get to more of that in a minute, but ccsalespro.com/Lavu. If you haven't done that course, I shot it in a local restaurant and I talk about this concept of dual pricing and layering that on top of this hardware as a service model. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Saleem here. So let's see, Saleem, if you want to get your mic and everything turned on here on camera. So Saleem and I have become really good friends. I've been working with Lavu for a long time on their program. And, they have an entirely, new reseller program. I've talked to so many agents that have said, I've talked about Lavu. How familiar are you with Lavu? And it's like, well, they looked into Lavu 3 years ago. Well, Lavu's been around for a long time, but now under new management, they have this new reseller program. And so I want to talk about that today. So let's see, Saleem, I can see you, but I need to get the, oh, there we go. How's it going, Saleem? Yep.
Awesome. Well, you said everything, so I'm gonna chime in a little bit and answer questions. But I mean, you nailed it on the head. This is super exciting, and look, I know we're jumping in. Fundamentally, what I wanted to do is take this hardware issue or objection off the table, right? So we banged our heads, with prospects for so long, where they're like, I don't have $1,000, I don't have $2,000, I actually need to borrow $5,000. Like, I just didn't want to hear it. So we just wanted to take it off their table. And look, selfishly, from my perspective, I'm not compensated on hardware sales either, right? Just like the folks on this webinar are not paid on hardware, they're paid on residuals, or they put food on the table for their family with residuals. That's the same way that we operate as a company too. So my investors, my board, they don't give a crap about hardware, pardon my French. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things where sometimes you have an issue that's so nasty, you just take it off the table, right? And you just get rid of it. Just don't worry about it. It's like, so I love that. And I think for those of you that are on here that have sold restaurants, if you could just totally remove hardware from the negative part of the equation and just say, don't worry about that. It's just incredible how it opens things up. So Saleem, zoom out a little bit and talk about how was Lavu doing hardware, say 24 months ago prior to this? What are you doing today? Break it down a little bit. I know we already talked a lot about the hardware as a service model, but like, how is it working now? And what are you seeing as kind of differences operationally and from a sales perspective?
I'll tell you something actually really personal. So this summer, my wife and I are going to Europe. We obviously, I'm very busy, just like everybody on the phone over here. And we basically go on one vacation a year. And it's usually in the summer when we all have some time, right? You totally get it.
Yes.
And I remember when we last went to Europe, it was 3 years ago, and it was August. It was August, I think it was maybe 4 years ago, August of 2019. And we burned $1 million that month, $1 million. And I remember looking at my phone and seeing that we had burned $1 million. And the majority of that was hardware purchases. And me giving away hardware for free to restaurant owners because I wanted to compete with Toast, because I thought that was the game that I had to play.
Right.
And that was not the right thing to do. So back then, what we were doing is I was buying hardware and I was literally giving it away to restaurants, which obviously they were interested in, but they had no skin in the game to do that. Fast forward to today, what we did is we basically offer a system, right? We partnered with Lavu independent sales agents. We partner with other restaurants who come to us directly, and we say, hey, you would need an iPad, no problem. It's it's like $35 a month, or if you want a credit card reader and a stand and a cash drawer, it's like $50 a month. Nobody can bat an eye at that. And then we basically say, if you have any issues, you can pay a little bit more. We have a program called Lavu Care, where basically they can get overnight replacements if there's any problems. We're 100% iOS based, so you can either go to your neighborhood Best Buy or Walmart and pick up an iPad if you have an issue. And a lot of our customers like that. They feel like we have the best hardware partner in the world with Apple. But we've just taken it off the table and make it so we made it so digestible for our restaurant and our partners to make sure that they're successful.
I love it. Yeah, and so One of the other concepts that I mentioned a little bit ago that I wanted to talk about a little bit is this idea of like free placement, right? And so
Mhm.
talk a little bit about the types of deals you're seeing that are coming through where agents are kind of eating the cost, and then maybe give an example of how that works versus one of these deals where they're passing that hardware as a service cost onto the restaurant, versus eating it. Like talk about that a little bit because I think a lot of them may not, a lot of our audience may not fully understand like how does this work for them, the reseller.
Yeah, look, I was at NRA yesterday. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the phone that were at NRA at the restaurant show. When you walk on the floor, it's evident that this space is super crowded. And
Right.
so you really only have one shot at a prospect. And so if you only have one shot, you're going to put your best foot forward. And the only way to put your best foot forward is by creating a proposal that's so good, an offer that's so good that they can't refuse, right? To borrow from the movie. And so what we do for our partners, the folks that are on this call, if somebody's going to pay you, let's say it's $100,000 volume restaurant per month, they're doing, and they're going to do dual pricing, and we do it in a compliant way. Um, the rev share to our partner is 80/20, so they get 80% residuals, lifetime residuals. We get 20%, so that's $1,600 in their pocket. They can probably afford to cover $150 or $200 of hardware if that's what the customer needs, and they're still left with $1,500 a month for the rest of their life, right? So
Right.
a little bit of work and you take the objection away and your proposal is so compelling, you absolutely blow through all of the other people that are trying to pitch that customer. It's a no-brainer. On top of that, they have an agent that they can always refer to, because what are restaurants doing? Restaurants are in the business of selling food and drink, but more importantly, they're providing service. So we have to provide service that's better than or equal to the service these restaurants provide their patrons, right? And so
Right.
when you look at that whole solution, it's a no-brainer. And that's why we're winning in the market. Like we're growing so fast.
Yeah, and so let's take that and apply that to some of the resellers that are listening now. What are you seeing as far as the resellers that are actively the Labu independent sales agents that are selling Labu in the field today? What percentage of
Mhm.
their deals are they doing this hardware as a service model versus selling the hardware cost upfront? And what are you hearing from them in terms of their ability to close more deals as a result of removing hardware from the equation?
I would say we have about 60% of our Lisas, or Lavu independent sales agents, who basically just take care of everything, right? They just walk in and
Right.
they know this is a competitive situation and they want to put their best foot forward. And we basically say, hey, no problem. You can just pay it on residuals, and then we just wait for the residuals to kick in, and then they move on and they add another deal. We have one gentleman, I'm not sure if he's on the phone today. He's done like 5 deals with us just this month, and like 3 on last Friday. He was
That's
just
awesome.
emailing me right now about how excited he is. So, and then we have other people who take care of everything. They take care of the merchant processing on the account is so large that
Right.
they take care of the software and the hardware.
Right.
But we're very flexible, right? If the merchant wants to pay for something, if the restaurant, if the Lisa wants to pay for it, we're happy to kind of split the baby as it is.
Got it. Right. So the idea basically is, and I think a way maybe for our audience to even understand a little better is it's the idea of like, just like they have Schedule A cost that
Yep.
comes off the residuals, they can a lot of times eat those costs if they want. Sometimes they can pass it on to the merchant if they want. And that's kind of what we've done with hardware. Right. So we have
Hmm.
hardware and it's like, depending on which hardware you want, there are these monthly costs. And then you can either pay that cost out of your residuals and eat it, or, and that's situations where you're making, 1,500 bucks a month, 2,000 a month, which is pretty common actually with dual pricing on these deals. You might choose to eat
Right.
it. Other times you might say, I'm not going to eat that. And you have that on the application to pass that on to, to the restaurant owner. So let's talk about payment processing for a minute. One thing that is interesting
Hmm.
is I've talked to agents lately. And again, I think because you guys have just been around so long. I mean, how long has Lavu been in operation, Saleem?
Since 2010, yeah, since 2010, we were
So
SaaS
15
only, and
years
we've
almost.
kind of evolved over time.
Yeah. So, as Lavu has gone through different iterations of this, different people have looked at Lavu at different points in time. And so I realized we probably need to kind of break this down a little bit. So for the individual agent, I want you to talk about the payment processing and this rationale for the reseller program you have today, which has the payment processing, the hardware, the software, everything under one roof as part of Lavu. Explain a little bit about how that works and kind of your rationale to moving to that model with the independent agents.
Yeah, so the context is, and you hit it on the head. You said 13 years ago you used to be able to walk into a restaurant and offer a dumb terminal and
Right,
basically shave 10 basis points off of somebody's processing. And
right.
because they liked you, they would give you the business, right? But companies like Toast, companies like Square, and to some extent Lavu have come in and basically disenfranchised these really hardworking credit card reps or ISOs. And so what they're doing is now they need a solution to combat Toast so they don't lose their long-standing accounts. And so our thought was we are an open ecosystem. We want to partner with the people that are in the field. We think there's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of relationships. So we've started this program, obviously, along with your help, where we basically partnered with these ISOs, and we call them Lavu Independent Sales Agents, where they basically go out there, they bring us a lead, we will close the deal for them so they can be as involved or not involved as they want. Our reps will actually close the deal and they essentially get 80 cents, 80% residuals for life. And so it's a really, really great deal. We even take care of the tier one, tier two, and tier three service. We would love if the agent can continue to monitor the account so that if there's an issue, they can bring it to our attention so that our amazing customer success team can jump in and make sure the customer is okay. But it's almost like a supercharged referral program where we're just really excited to work with all these great people that are really looking for a solution, and I think we have it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about it is, kind of this, you can be as involved as you want. I know, like I know a lot of people now that are selling with Lavu, and I know
Mhm.
some that are kind of the restaurant experts. They've been selling POS for the last 10 years. So they
Yeah.
enjoy the being able to offer the free hardware and all that, and they do like to be really involved, and they're learning Lavu, becoming experts at that. And then there's others who are like, man, I've been selling auto repair shops and pizza shops for the last 10 years or 5 years, and now they want to get into this. And so for them, they tend to lean a lot more heavily on the Lavu inside sales team to help them get the demos and get the deals done. But I think what I hear you
Yep.
saying is, regardless of which way they go with that, they get their 80% residual split, which is extremely competitive for the individual agent. And then that's a lifetime vested residual.
That's correct. Yeah. Look, we want to make it easy, and we want to partner with you to make sure that we're delivering an amazing product, which was ranked number one by Capterra, the best restaurant POS. I think for like 3 quarters in a row. Most recently, April 1st. So we feel really good about what we can offer, and we listen to our agents. Like we get that feedback, and we want to improve. So we're constantly iterating to make sure that our customers are happy.
Cool. Well, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to move into the Q&A. If you have a question, just type it out in the question box over to the right. You can ask anything you want, compensation, hardware, software, whatever you want to ask. I'll do my best to kind of moderate that and throw some questions to Saleem here. While we're doing that, Saleem, I know we do have the link set up, and actually I'm going to send it to everybody here. But we do have ccsalespro.com/Lavu, which is where we have a landing page with more info about this. But what else would you tell people that want to learn more about signing up? What's the process like to become a Lavu independent sales agent? And then we're going to move into the questions.
Yeah, it's super easy. So again, go to lavu.com, lavu.com/CC Sales Pro. Just drop in your information, name, email, phone number. One of our reps will call you and basically walk you through and handhold you on the process. And it's very, very simple. We're a little bit different in the sense that we ask you to participate. So to kind of make sure that you're really serious, we'll ask for a commitment from you, a small commitment. But it's very standard, and our reps have been very, very happy with that. And then after that, you're on your own. We'll in terms of being able to go out there, we give you training materials. Actually, James has prepared them, and they're really, really easy, digestible videos. And then we will work with you to go and get leads in your area. So if you live in a small town, a rural part of Illinois, we'll send you leads from our lead list over there. If you need some help kind of striking up a conversation, or you don't exactly know what to say to broach a topic with a restaurant, we have some pointers and a script to help you with that as well. So we work with the gamut of agents in terms of experience level, but we definitely would love to work with you.
Cool. Well, I've got some good questions here. So Saleem and I are just going to run through these. Hopefully we'll get done a little bit early tonight. That'll be great for all of you. I know everybody's super busy, but we've got some good questions. I want to try to get through as many of them as I can. Yeah, so it's interesting. Several people were talking about the subscription model and how, I mean, it really is
Mhm.
crazy when you think about it, Saleem, that like our industry is one of the only ones left that is still trying. A lot of people are still trying to do this model that's not subscription based with the hardware. I think we have enough market data to show that business owners don't like that. So, what about the verticals you work with? Give us a little more context. I mentioned fine dining restaurants. They're asking about maybe liquor stores.
Mhm.
Like, give us some context of what other verticals you might work with.
Yeah, I mean, look, so over 50% of our business is full service restaurants. And the reason why we like that is because, you can sell them one terminal and then you can sell them four more terminals, kitchen display system, online ordering, invoicing. Like you can sell them everything, right? And you can really be their partner. What do our restaurants want? They want one throat to choke, right? Small businesses typically want one throat to choke. So our customers are anywhere from 100,000 to call it $1 million a month. We have other customers that are really, really big. We work with NYU, we work with Salina, we work with University of Massachusetts. Again, restaurants or food and beverage within those places. We have stadiums. So we can really run the gamut, but our sweet spot is the restaurants. And then we do have vape shops and some other auto kind of lightweight stuff
Sure.
that works really well too.
Cool. Talk to us about alternate pricing options to dual pricing. So let's say the restaurant. Well, I guess a good question first would be of the, you guys are doing a lot of deals every month through the Lisa channel. So of
Mhm.
the deals, say in the last 30 days, how many were on some kind of dual pricing program or compliance surcharge program or whatever? And then what are some of the other options and how would that work if they didn't want that?
I think I came across one in the last 3 months that wanted to be on traditional pricing. But I mean, it's like overwhelmingly dual
Sure.
pricing, because
But I
that's
guess
where it's at.
if they want to do traditional, I mean,
Yeah,
they could.
not a problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Not a problem. We're happy to work with them. And look, for some businesses, it just makes sense, right? Until they're
Right.
ready.
Well, and I guess one of the other questions there would be too, like, or one of the other important things I think, Saleem, would be if you're going to do traditional pricing, just remember the margins are not going to be there like they would be with dual pricing. So you definitely are going to want to pass on the SaaS fees
That's
and the
right.
HAAS fees and all that, right? So that could be the
Right.
issue there.
And I'll also say that, look, we can do payments only too, right? So if it doesn't have to be a restaurant, it could just be an e-com, it could just be somebody else that has a lot of volume that just needs a VAR, right? Like we do that, we do that for
On the
other
Lavu Pay
businesses
side.
that do. Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
exactly. You can be a
Sure.
Lisa for that. And we have businesses that are in completely different industries relative to restaurants that are some of our largest clients.
Okay. This reseller program is for US only. Is it other territories that somebody asked
Correct.
about, that, but I think it's just US, right?
Yeah, just US only right now. Yep.
Okay. Let's see here. Um, yeah. So if you have some of you asked some specific questions about Schedule A stuff and all that, I mean, obviously just reach out to the Lavu support team. They can answer more of the specific questions. I mean, I think Saleem, I could speak for you here in saying the Schedule A is really
Yeah,
competitive and all that. But
yeah. Yeah,
um,
we want to make it attractive. Yep.
cool. So yeah. So I think one other thing to clarify, and it's interesting looking at these questions, and I'm trying to kind of condense because there's so many. Again, there's still going to be questions about on the processing side of things. So again, I want to make it really clear, and you can, I know you guys do some processor agnostic deals with really large ISOs and things like that. But to clarify, maybe you could talk a little bit more about this idea of the payment processing being in-house and like why that's improving the merchant experience and the agent experience versus the external gateway integration, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you could touch on that one more time. There's still some people are still asking, so wait a minute, is it processor agnostic? Like, talk about that a little more if you would.
Yeah. Yeah, so look, we are happy to partner with folks that want to bring their own processing and own paper, but where we are most successful serving agents, serving merchants, and even serving their customers is by using Lavu and using Lavu Pay, which is our processing. And Lavu Pay allows you to get 80% residuals, right? 80% residuals, which is really, really strong. So that's how we operate. And the reason why it's a better experience is because the onboarding is seamless. We are a PayFac. We get almost instant. We get instant approval. You can move very, very quickly. Everything kind of comes in one box. And then our onboarding agents are are fantastic in terms of getting people live. We were just looking at some stats. Like we're basically running at 17 days from kind of payment to somebody actually going live. 17 days. So it's
Wow.
really, 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 really strong.
Yeah, and I think the main issue, for those of you asking about this, I think one of the main issues that Saleem and I talked about way back. I mean, when we started working together on this, is that for so many agents that are now this complexity in payments means that in many cases, Saleem, you mentioned one throat to choke, kind of this idea of like no matter
Yeah,
what goes wrong, I
exactly.
know to call Lavu. But I think
Yep.
what a lot of agents, it's almost like there's three throats right now because you got the processor, then you
Hmm.
got the gateway, then you got the technology company. And it just creates issues because for one thing, none of those three companies make enough money to justify giving the hardware away for free or doing the hardware as a service model or software as a service model. And so it's hard to do this kind of a program as an agent. But the other issue is when things go wrong, which they inevitably are going to go wrong in some way, when you have this many different hands, trying to deal with it, it's like, whose fault is it? And if you call the processor, they're going to say, oh, it's the gateway's fault. If you call the gateway, they're going to say it's the technology company's fault. If you call the technology company, they're going to say it's the processor's fault. And so I think a lot of this program came out of kind of that frustration. And Saleem and I both hearing from resellers that it's like, hey, this is really annoying. How can this be better? And so I think that was a big part of it, Saleem. At least from my perspective.
It streamlines everything, right? It streamlines the experience. The merchant is so much happier. And they can just kind of get back to doing business. That's what matters the most.
Well, I think the other really cool thing about it is it's like Lavu is at a technology company. And so you guys are willing to do a really aggressive residual split because it's like, hey, you're making some money on the processing, right? So that's great, right? And so, I love it.
Yeah, okay, it's a win-win.
A couple of other ones here that are interesting kind of feature questions. Talk about pay at the table right now. Like, what does Lavu have for that as far as like, do you have like the QR code thing on the receipt? Do you have, pay at, like, what are the pay at the table options right now?
Yeah, so we have two options. One is we have a QR code on the receipt, and so that's something that's available to people. That's fantastic. And then the other one is we have an iPad mini with a mobile device attached to it. And then in the future, we're going to be coming out with a smaller form factor as well, because that's something that our customers have asked about. That's more lightweight, again, that allows you to do all of those things, order, not only pay at the table, but order as well, right? And so one of the pieces of feedback we got on the iPad was even the iPad mini might be a little bit too big for aprons. So we're working on a smaller form factor that is fully featured, that allows you to pay, and it's super sleek. I was, testing it the other day.
Awesome. Well, we have a bunch more questions here to run through. While I'm doing that, though, for those of you that are, some people are saying, hey, I'm interested. How do I sign up? And I know Saleem gave the link. Let me give it again real quick. If you go to lavu.com/CC Sales Pro, so it's LAVU.com/CC Sales Pro, that'll take you to a landing page where you learn more about Lavu. And then from there, you can actually go directly into the training that I did together with the Lavu team at a local restaurant to kind of explain that. So thank you to those that are interested. What about, let's see, we'll go through. So there's so many in here.
While you're looking, I'll just mention one thing. So it's kind of a cheesy name, but we have a special right now. It's called the Hot Grill Summer. And basically what it is another incentive to get more logos through the door with our agents and our restaurants is we're waiving the SAAS for 3 months, right? So that is actually really awesome. That's something that we have never done. But because it makes sense, we're actually waiving the SAAS for 3 months. And if this deal continues to work, which the way it's working through the end of May, we'll extend it in June. But as of right now, it's just through the end of May, where if you get in, the customer doesn't have to pay for their software, or the Lisa or the agent doesn't have to pay for software for 3 months, which reduces the buy-in.
Love it. Very cool. Here's a question. I normally wouldn't bring this one because, definitely if you're listening, talk to an attorney if you want legal advice about agreements. This is not legal advice or anything, but somebody mentioned about what happens if Lavu down the road were to like sell or be bought or something. What happens to their residual income? And since I know the context here, maybe you could just share the high level of what goes on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lifetime residual, so we would look to honor that. And if you wanted to sell your residuals to somebody, then Lavu would obviously like to have the ability to purchase your residuals, but it's not mandatory or anything like that.
Right.
So you're protected from that perspective.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it up because I know you and I had these conversations, and I love the way that it went, because I think what's interesting is a lot of tech companies that are trying to get the ISO agent distribution, they really don't want to honor the idea of the lifetime residuals, which agents are so used to. So I thought it was pretty cool that you guys did go down that route and really have this lifetime thing where, it's for the life of the account. So, let's see here. What kind of marketing is provided to restaurants as far as you guys have? What's your pitch to restaurants to increase their revenue? Reward programs, loyalty programs. You know what I mean?
So we have loyalty programs. We have drip emails through our online ordering, Lavu online ordering, where basically if somebody comes in and registers to buy directly from you, they will give their name and they would give their email. If they want, they can give their phone number and their birthday, and then you can actually set up kind of a sequence or a workflow that says after the 7th day they've come in, you can offer them a 10% coupon. Hey James, we miss you. Here's 10% off. Please come back, and we can systematically do that, and that works really well. Like I know some customers have 250,000 loyalty points. They've used it. They've used it incredibly well as a way to get customers to come back in. But we're also working on some other lightweight ways through text to work with customers to make sure they're having a good experience and they continue to come back.
Awesome. We'll do one last question here. There's been so many. I think I've done a good job of condensing into the main ones. So one last question here that's been asked quite a few times in different ways. Talk to us about the installation process, right? So I think most of the agents on here have had some kind of a nightmare scenario with different point of sale solutions where they've made the sale and then like the next week of their life is taken up with trying to get it to work. So how do you guys handle the installation, especially when things get rocky? Like talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so what we do is there's kind of two scenarios. One is a very simple setup, one terminal, two terminal. We'll make sure we have a checklist of questions that we go through the restaurant, and obviously the agent can participate, where we ask them their square footage of the restaurant, if they have any cabling, what their download speeds. We do all that stuff up front because we know if we showed up there or our partner showed up there and tried to install and the guy has like no internet, it's going to be a problem. And we all know that there's a lot of restaurants who have not yet caught up to the digital age. So we do a lot of that front end work on the kickoff call during onboarding. And our onboarding agents are very, very particular and they're very good to make sure they hit all the details. From there, we'll decide whether it's a good fit for a remote installation, and we'll basically sit down with them and we'll take as long as it takes in order for them to be able to plug things in, etc. If it requires kind of a third party to come in and run cable and do an install, then we'll share that cost with the agent and we'll share that cost with the merchant, and then they can decide if that makes sense. But we're very collaborative. We want to make sure that it works. Otherwise, it's not a win. So we do all that front end work right away up front.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. I don't see any other questions that I did. If I missed your question, I'm going to send all these questions over to the Lavu team. And of course, they'll run through these. And if I missed anything, they can reach out and answer that. Saleem, it's always a pleasure doing these events with you. One thing I love, Saleem, and we talked about this. I remember when we did the first event together, it probably was almost a year ago at this point, at least 8 months. And I already am getting the emails that I talked about in that event where I said, the reason I like to do these is because I like to get the emails from the agents that say, I'm at 10,000 a month, I'm at 20,000 a month residual, because I watched that event. And so that's been super exciting for me. I'm sure you're hearing this as well.
That's very fulfilling. No, it's great. I mean, if we can help people kind of live a better life, that's why we're all working for our families anyways, right? So
I love it. I love it.
It's a means to an end.
Awesome. Well, for those of you that are on here that are interested in that, I'll give you the link one more time. And I put it in the chat, but it's lavu.com/ccsalespro. Definitely go check that out. Reach out to the Lavu team. If you're already signed up with Lavu, but you just haven't done deals, they have changed some things. They've added some things. There's been improvements. There's been different things like that. Just reach out, find out more about that. Lavu, any final words of wisdom or challenge for our audience today?
No, I'm super excited. Again, don't forget to take advantage of our offer right now, 3 months free SaaS. Hopefully that pushes you over the edge, and at least have a conversation. Go to lavu.com/ccsalespro and have a conversation with our team. You won't be disappointed.
Awesome. Thanks, Lavu. Thanks everybody for taking your time. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.